Talk Shoes. Recorded live.
Welcome to Dreamlist Radio, aimed to inspire you to follow and achieve your dreams. I'm your host, Melissa Borkhorst, life coach, motivational speaker, and author of the Dreamlist Photojournal series. Please visit dreamlistmedia.com to find tips and advice to help make your dreams come true, and to sign up for my free newsletter to receive the latest news, specials, and for a dose of inspiration. Today I have self-made linguist Susanna Zaraysky with me, who's going to share tips from her new book, Language is Music. This book is focused on making learning foreign languages fun, easy, and affordable for anyone with a desire to communicate effectively with people around the world. So, born with a sight disability, Susanna developed a hypersensitivity to sound and learned to listen to language as she would music. She has what you would call an ear for languages, and having used music to successfully learn English, Russian, French, Spanish, Italian, Portuguese, and Serbo-Croatian, all with excellent accents. Susanna has lived in 9 countries and has traveled to over 50 countries. She is passionate about sharing her experience and belief that no matter one's economic status or past language learning experience, anyone can be multilingual and see the world. So welcome, Susanna. Thank you for joining me on Dreamlist Radio.
Thank you. This was a wonderful opportunity. Thanks for having me.
So first off, tell me more about your background and how you learned all those languages. That's quite a bit than the average. Usually, typically people are lucky to learn one language, but you've learned over 6.
Yes. Well, so first of all, Russian is my first language because I was born in the former Soviet Union, and I came to the U.S. when I was 3. So English is my second language. It's actually my strongest language. And then I learned French because I studied it for 4 years in the U.S. in school, and then I was a foreign exchange student in France for just 2 months when I was 15. And when I came back when I was 15, I had a perfect French accent. And I baffled people because I met French people in the U.S. who said, I've been living here for 20 years, and you speak better French than I do after being in France for 2 months. So,
oh, wow.
I spoke better French than they spoke English, so they were just shocked. And then I took Spanish when I was in high school, and I learned Spanish really quickly because I already had the base of French, and since they're both Romance languages, it was quite easy. And then Italian I learned also in college, and I took only 1 semester of Italian grammar, and I didn't even come to class at some points. The teacher just let me come to take exams because I was able to figure out a lot of the grammar with my French and Spanish. So after 1 semester of Italian grammar, I was already in an Italian literature class. And then Portuguese I taught myself using a book. And then also Portuguese I learned because I live in an area where there's a large Portuguese community. I live in Cupertino, California, and I'm in Santa Clara. There's a big Portuguese immigrant community, and they have a radio station, and I just listen to their radio a lot. And by listening, I picked up a lot of new words, and I was able to understand things. And then Serbo-Croatian I learned because I lived in Bosnia a few years after the war, so I learned Bosnian, which is, similar to Serbian and Croatian. And then I lived in Budapest for a semester, my last semester of college, and I used to speak basic Hungarian, but I forgot most of it. And I've also studied Arabic and Hebrew, neither of which I can speak. I can read Hebrew, and I can read a little bit of Arabic sometimes.
Okay, so you've learned quite a few different things, but what made you decide to actually write this book for other people?
It was a revelation that came about in 2 different steps. 3 years ago, I read an article by Dr. Oliver Sacks, the renowned neurologist, who wrote the book Awakenings, which was made into a movie. He wrote an article called Stereo Sue about a woman called Susan Barry who she was born cross-eyed, or she became cross-eyed when she was a baby, and in her 40s, she did vision exercises, and with the vision exercises, she was able to see in 3 dimensions. And I read that article, and I had no idea, Melissa, that my having been born cross-eyed actually made me not see in 3 dimensions. I thought I could see like everyone else. I had 2 operations on my eyes. My eyes were straight, but my brain only processes the image from one eye at a time, which means that I have 2D vision. I see flat, which means I have very bad depth perception. So, don't invite me to play tennis because it's not going to happen.
Right.
And it's going to be really bad. And I never understood why. I hated parallel parking. I hated merging traffic. It was really a mystery to me. And then when I read the book, I read the article, I realized that I actually see differently than 95% of the population. And then I read another book by him, by Dr. Oliver Sacks, a year ago called Musicophilia, and it's about the effect of music on the brain. And that's when I realized that I actually listen to language like music. I'm able to copy sounds like I can a song. And that's when the two things came together, the thing about the vision and then the music. I realized that because my eyes weren't seeing as well as 95% of the population, my ears were probably extra sensitive. And that's how I was able to reproduce sounds, because I could hear very well. And what I realized is that, people don't have to have a visual disability to have supersonic hearing to be able to speak languages. It's a matter of training one's ears, and it's a matter of realizing that most of communication comes from listening, not from talking.
Right.
And it's the same if you're speaking your own language, because there are people that can speak English perfectly, but you can't have a conversation with them because they don't listen. And it's, it's like talking to a wall. Well, it's the same thing when you're learning a foreign language. If you're not listening to the way people speak, if you're not listening to the way the language is pronounced, your pronunciation is going to be horrible and people won't understand you.
Right.
And so that's when I realized it. And I realized that, when we're babies, we listen to our language for almost a year before we start speaking, which means that we listen to understand the rhythm of our language, the melody, the timing, how long vowels are, how long the consonants are, how much of a break is there between words. And that's when we start speaking. But when we learn in school, the first thing we do is we sit down and the teacher makes us repeat our name and hi, my name is, in whatever language.
Right, and learn certain words, things like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And what happens is that you either copy the accent that your teacher has, if your teacher is also not a native speaker, or you already start pronouncing the words with the wrong accent because you're only pronouncing it with the range of frequency that you're used to in your own language. Mm-hmm. So instead, you need to start just listening. Let's say you want to learn Chinese. Well, turn on Chinese news on the public TV channel. Even if you have no idea what they're saying, just listen to it. You could be dusting your house. You could be sorting your laundry. I don't care. You could just have it in the background so that your ears get used to the range of frequency in Mandarin. And then when you start learning Mandarin, your pronunciation is going to be better because your ears are already used to the sounds that are produced in that language.
Right, so going into some steps, what would be some of the first steps someone should take to start learning a foreign language? You say one of the steps would be, the listening to it. So you've got, radio. I know in the book you mentioned TV. What are some other first steps that you would suggest?
So the first steps are, like I said, having the music or the TV or the radio or whatever in the background. Another really important thing is to listen to Mozart because there have been different studies about this, that Mozart has one of the highest range of frequencies from low to high sounds. So by listening to Mozart's music, your ears are getting accustomed to different sounds. So it's going to be easier for you to reproduce in the future. So that's one of the first things. And then when you're listening to the spoken language, let's say you have the TV on in Chinese, just kind of listen to where you think they're asking a question. When do you think they're making a statement? How does it sound when they're excited about something? Because each language every culture has its own way of saying a sentence or saying a question or making an exclamatory statement. So it's important to understand how the facial gestures that you see on the TV are correlating to what you think they're saying. So it's all about listening in the beginning. And then after the listening part, I would say that people should, let's say they get songs in the language. I'm going to switch to Spanish just because more people in the United States probably listen to music in Spanish than other languages. So let's say you turn on your local Spanish radio station and you really like Maná, which is a famous Mexican rock group. And you start singing along, you have no idea what you're singing. Go onto the internet, find that song, find the lyrics in Spanish, get the translation in English, and then read along as you're listening to the song so you recognize where the words are.
Right.
And then you hear the words, listen to the lyrics, and so you're reading the lyrics, and then eventually you put the lyrics down and you just listen to the song and write out the lyrics. See how much of what you're hearing you're able to reproduce as you're writing.